From the worst December to the biggest single-day point gain in history, a huge market rally after a bloody December. The Dow ending a day up over 1,000 points on day 5 of the government shutdown. This is President Trump and the First Lady make a surprise visit to the troops in Iraq. I'm John Taffer, in for Elizabeth McDonald. This is the Evening Edit. The market rebounding in a big way, skyrocketing as President Trump travels to Iraq to thank the troops for their service. Hillary Vaughn is at the White House with all of the details. Hillary?
Hi, John. Well, the president is on Air Force One right now on his way to his second stop of what is a 2-stop surprise visit overseas. The president and First Lady Melania left the White House in the middle of the night on Christmas to visit his first combat zone during his term. 5,000 U.S. military men and women stationed overseas in Iraq spent over 3 hours with their commander-in-chief. The president explaining his decision to pull troops out of the neighboring Syria, saying ISIS is nearly defeated and Iraq will be a launch pad for any military action needed against the group, also pushing back on critics' claims that leaving Syria is hasty. Trump saying today he gave military leadership several 6-month extensions to get troops out, and he finally made the decision that it's time for them to go.
Today, they're not so dominant anymore. Looked at a map, and 2 years ago, it was a lot of red all over that map, and now you have a couple little spots. We'll be watching ISIS very closely.
The surprise visit comes in the middle of a government shutdown. Today marks day 5 of the stalemate between Congress and the White House over funding packages, and the border wall is standing in the way. Trump today was asked how long this shutdown will last, and he made it clear he's not budging.
Whatever it takes. I mean, we're going to have a wall. We're going to have safety. We need safety for our country.
White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett telling me today that any impact from this shutdown, even if it lasts several weeks, is only temporary. And once the government opens back up again, any of those slight changes will be completely reversible. John?
Wow, thanks, Hillary. President Trump may be slamming the Fed, but White House advisor Kevin Hassett says we're probably looking at the best Christmas ever in terms of the economy.
I think that the president's perspective there, that if the Fed is lifting rates, it's because they think the economy is really solid. Well, it's really confirmed in the data. That's, I talk to the president almost every day about what's in the data. And if you look at, Secretary Mnuchin was calling around to the banks a few days ago. If you look at the anecdotal reports, we're looking at probably the best Christmas ever.
He also said Fed Chief Jerome Powell's job is 100% secure. Joining me now, former Reagan economic advisor Art Laffer.
Art, how are you, John?
Hi, Art. How are you?
Great.
Good to see you, buddy. Hassett says the coming year will see upside risks. Do you agree with that?
I do. I think every policy is in place that's correct. The deregulation, the tax bill. I even think that the Fed going maybe 6 of those increases in interest rates were great. I think they should not have done the last 2. It's had a very deleterious effect on the market. But I think we're in very good shape. And if the president gets through on his trade stuff, this could be the best year ever, 2019. I'm just very excited. And Kevin Hassett has it exactly correct. We're going to have over 3% growth in this last year. That's amazing, John. And by the way, you spell your last name a little bit wrong. The first letter should be an L, not T.
I guess we're connected in that way.
Somehow it has to be somewhere, divine providence somewhere.
Art, I'm out on the street as a business person all the time,
yes.
And I see, high retail activity, great restaurant opportunities. Where is the disconnect between the marketplace and the market?
I don't think the market's out of whack much. I mean, we've had a very nice run since Trump was elected and nominated. It's been there. I mean, it's been a very big increase in wealth in this country. It's going to be a lot bigger in 2019. But remember, with Reagan, we came in 1981 on January 20th, and we had our first tax bill passed that year. But it took quite a while for that tax bill to really catch hold and really cause the enormous growth in 83 and 84. And if that same type of pattern holds with President Trump, 2019 and 2020 are going to be really spectacular years. From January 1st, 1983 to June 30th, 1984, we grew, John, by 12% or at an 8% per annum annual growth rate. We aren't anywhere near that yet, but it is possible. And that's what the policies do. And I think these policies, if allowed to really steep into the economy, will do a great job. And Kevin Hassett's just wonderful, and I think he's dead on.
You know, President Trump, slamming the Fed, tweeted this: "The only problem our economy has is the Fed. They don't have a feel for the market. They don't understand necessary trade wars or strong dollars or even Democrat shutdowns over the borders. The Fed is like a powerful golfer who can't score because he has no touch. He can't putt." What do you think?
I love him. I think the president's brilliant. I mean, tweets like that are just brilliant. The Fed and the president have not always disagreed. They've often disagreed. I mean, it was Arthur Burns who supposedly cost Nixon his election to Kennedy. Then I was in the Nixon White House in 1970-72, and during that period there was a battle going on between Nixon and Arthur Burns as Fed chairman. It was just amazing. Those battles happened, and they're happening now. I think the Fed should have been far more sensitive to the stock market. And, there's nothing wrong with taking a little time off from raising rates. If they just had seen those markets coming down and just stopped and took a reprieve, I think everything could have been a lot better. And I think the president has a lot better sense for the markets than the Fed does as well. I think he's right on that.
Would you have liked to have seen the Fed wait till after the first of the year to raise hikes?
I wish they'd not done the last two. The first 6 they did, 8 rate hikes in 2 years, the first president's 2 years, the most ever by any stretch of the imagination. And I wish they'd just taken a little, 6 would have been enough. Let them go for a while before they do the next round, maybe a year from now. That would have made a lot of sense to me. They had to raise rates at some stage. There's no question. But these last 2 ones were market killers, I thought.
I found out businessmen really reacted to it occurring before the end of the year, and it really juggled confidence. I think it had a very negative effect.
Yeah, they could have waited 6 months. There's no, there's this High Road to China with Tom Selleck, my favorite movie, and they had to go see this scientist up in the mountains of Himalayas, and they had to go by oxen. Go by oxen, he said. Oxen are slow, but the earth, she is patient. And, a long boom that's done carefully, slowly, deliberatively is far better than a rush and then a crash. And I think we shouldn't be doing things too rashly at all. We've got all the policies in place, John, and all we need to do is wait for them to take their full effect, and you'll see things really work out nicely.
So, Art, how come your peers don't share your enthusiasm in some cases?
I don't think they know much economics as I do, John. I'm just joking. I've had a lot of experience in Washington, as you know, a lot of academic experience as well. And, when you look at these things from a very long-term perspective, it works out very nicely. If you look at 2 articles in the Wall Street Journal in the last week, one by Gary Cohen, which talked about the tax bill, which really nailed it right on the head. And then there was a lovely piece by Jason Furman, who doesn't like our economics at all, by the way, but he conceded in that article that we are doing about 5 times better than he thought we would, both on employment and on GDP growth. I mean, we've hit his 4 or 5 year target in the first year on both of those. So he gave us a lot of credit, and he does say that it was due to the tax bill. He didn't concede that he was wrong on his paper, but it was a very nice paper that he wrote.
Well, I share your enthusiasm, Art. Great to have you.
It's very exciting.
It is. It's a great time.
It's going to be a great year, 2019, John. 2000, and just change that last name from T to L, and you got it.
Why don't you change yours from L to T? We'll be good to go.
I'll make you a deal. Let's switch them.
Take care, Art.
Talk to you later, John. Bye.
While visiting the troops, President Trump slammed the Democrats on the shutdown.
We need a wall. So when you say how long is it going to take, when are they going to say that we need border security? When are the Democrats going to say? Don't forget, the Democrats all agreed that you need a wall until I wanted it. Once I wanted it, they didn't agree.
Joining me now, Conservative Review contributor Tom Borelli and Democratic strategist Al Mutter. Gentlemen, the shutdown could cost between $800 and $900 million per day in lost productivity. Why wouldn't we just build a wall? We're going to spend the money anyway.
Well, I agree, John. Thanks for having me tonight. We really should build the wall. At the end of the day, it's about national security and security for the American people. Keep in mind that we know our border is porous. We have illegal aliens that are coming across the border. Sometimes they commit very serious crimes like rape and murder. And then there's the drug trafficking. Fentanyl, my God, is pouring over that border. In 2013, there were 3,000 overdose deaths from fentanyl. In 2017, there's almost 30,000. That's a tenfold increase. It's a security issue. We need to build a wall. We need to build it now.
Look, here's the thing. We've known for years that drugs are a problem, and whether we have a wall or not, they're going to continue to be a problem. Let's go back to Pablo Escobar days. I'm not against the wall. I'm for border security. But what happened to Mexico paying for it? Why are Americans paying for it? And why are we paying $800, $900 million a day, as you point out, on this shutdown? It's bad for our economy. It's bad for the folks who work for the federal government, and it's bad for America. And the president ought to compromise. Maybe he should offer up DACA for the wall. Maybe we could have some progress on both sides here.
I sort of think we went down that road for a moment. You know, I think that if we all knew the wall would save 1 million lives, we'd build a wall tomorrow. If we thought it would save one life, we probably wouldn't build a wall. Where do the benefits lie where it becomes the people's choice to build a wall? Where is the point that it becomes a yes in benefits?
Well, I think, again, as I said before, it's pretty obvious that, illegal aliens are coming across the border. Some of them commit serious crimes, drugs coming over the border. And what's really odd about this is that, back in 2006, Democrats were all in for building a border fence. Wall fence, let's talk about it. It needs to be a barrier. Hillary Clinton voted for it. Joe Biden, when he was a senator, voted for it. Obama, when he was a senator, voted for it. Even Chuck Schumer voted for it. So the only difference, as President Trump said, is it's President Trump, and it's resist all the time, but it's endangering the American people.
Al, you disagree?
I mean, look. Well, I disagree somewhat, and I love your question, because most experts on immigration policy don't think a wall is a solution. Your other guest alluded to what the truth is, which is that it's a mixture of things. We need security with border fences. We can have electronic and security. We can have stepped up surveillance. There's a lot of things we can do to improve our security. It doesn't have to be a magic wall that makes the president happy, but everybody ought to be able to get together. We have a Democratic House now. We have 20 senators on the Republican side running for re-election who need moderate voters, and we have a Republican president. They ought to come together, come up with a solution that's a compromise. Call it a wall, call it better security, I don't care. But let's also take care of the immigration reform problems once and for all and provide a path to citizenship, particularly for the dreamers in this country.
So where will he get the wall funding?
Not Mexico.
Well, right now it's sitting. Right now, it's sitting right in the Senate, and unfortunately, Democrat Senator Chuck Schumer is stamping his feet and says no. Look, President Trump is asking, I think, for $5 billion. I think the appropriation in the House bill is $5.7. Keep in mind, our defense budget is something like $670 billion. So this is less than 1% for border security. And I agree with the other guests, the wall isn't the be-all and end-all. We need a comprehensive plan, but a wall is important. There was not long ago where we saw, children being hung over the fence and being dropped down on the other side. A better wall, a better fence would really stop that. And at the end of the day, I think it would be better for those poor people trying to break in the country. If they know they can't get in, they might not make that dangerous trip.
I agree. They come up with this promise that they think they'll be able to get in, and then they don't. So obviously, that's not the American dream for them. So, gentlemen, this is a big issue. I don't think it's going to be resolved shortly, but clearly the wall is not the answer. We need a full immigration policy to move forward. Thank you both very much, and we'll see you in a little bit.
Thank you.
Coming up next, the American consumers shrugging off the government shutdown and those wildly volatile markets and delivering the strongest retail holiday season in years. Holiday retail sales are coming in the strongest in years, and it helped fuel today's monster rally. Christina Partsinevelos has details from the New York Stock Exchange. Christina.
What a day here on the New York Stock Exchange today. You had some really positive numbers coming from MasterCard. So retail sales did climb higher, 5.1% compared to last year over the holiday season. That was just the beginning, I guess, of the good news that helped push some of the markets higher. Some investors were talking about these numbers, saying this is positive, especially when considering consumer confidence, the fact that shoppers are still heading to the stores. So according to MasterCard, you had $850 billion this year during the holiday season. That is an uptick compared to last year, the largest growth that we have seen in 6 years. And it's not just all in stores, it's online as well. You're seeing a growth of online sales. You're seeing numbers coming from Amazon, too, that helped this retail rally. Valley. Amazon released a statement earlier this morning stating that this has been the best yet, or season best yet, that they have seen just across the board. One interesting point that a trader did make with me earlier today is that he highlighted a lot of these stores are discounting like crazy, so that's eating away at margins. It's still too soon to say whether it is a big sign for strength in retail heading into 2019. So I'm going to throw it back to you, John.
Thank you, Christina. It's an exciting report, and it shows that this might be a heck of a year coming up. Thank you. We know the retail industry had a strong holiday season, and that carries over to other sectors. For instance, according to the International Council of Shopping Centers, about 70% of shoppers who stay in a mall longer than 50 minutes will buy food and beverages. Another discretionary industry that's doing really well is the fitness industry. Joining me right now, the director of talent at Rumble Boxing, yes. Andy Stern. You know, Andy, your business interests me so much because we're all into health, but you've added a novelty to it. You've made it relevant. You've made it cool. You've made it timely.
We've made it fun.
Yeah.
Right? So the group fitness world, you have spin, you've got a lot of running. We wanted to bring boxing to the masses, and we wanted to have fun doing it. So we've got 60 individuals in a room, loud music, projectors on the wall, so it's easy to follow. We wanted to take away the guesswork. We do 5 rounds on the bag, 5 rounds on the floor with dumbbells and strength, and it's a blast. It's absolutely, it's so much fun.
And your revenue's off the charts. You guys are doing extremely well.
Very well. We launched our first one in January of 2017, so we're coming up on 2 years. We launched the second one in NoHo, third one in West Hollywood, Los Angeles. Came back to New York for a 5-story Upper East Side. And then we just launched Financial District, San Francisco, last Tuesday, in the hardest weeks of the year. Wow. We had 600 paid customers day one.
So you're the founding trainer.
Founding trainer.
What has surprised you? Has the demographics, the age group, what has surprised you about the reaction to your model?
Biggest surprise to me, I think, is that the people itself, it is not just a boxing world, right? It's not just a professional athlete world. It's people want to feel good. They want to learn a skill. And they also want to, it's a little bit of a therapy session, to be honest. So as much as it's exciting for me to train athletes and celebrities, I love seeing the average customer come back day in, day out, and honestly, not just improve them physically, but mentally.
So you've developed not only quite a reputation, you've got a couple of pretty terrific investors that are driving your success.
We've got some great names. Sylvester Stallone and Justin Bieber were one of the first two that really fell in love with the concept. And they've helped us really take this thing off to the next level. Equinox being our largest investor as well. They helped us early growth, and it's really only getting started for us, which is exciting.
Wow. So with that type of investors and this type of growth, what do you attribute your success to? Because it's not just health, because you're not just a health club. What is it that defines your success in your view?
It's an experience. And I really think that's where health has, it's been a big factor on it, in the sense that people want to go out and do things, you know, especially clients bring in clients. They don't want to go out to dinner and spend $400 or $500 on steaks and drinks. They bring them to Rumble. They work out together, they get a great sweat, a great time, listen to great music, they take pictures, they share it on social media. It's just really this fun experience, and young millennials are spending great dollars. I mean, we charge $32 to $36 a class, right? So they're spending good money for 45 minutes. We're giving them the best workout, but we're also giving them a fun experience, and that's really the big part of it all.
So it isn't just health and fitness, it's relevancy.
It's relevancy. They want to come, they want to take pictures with our Instagram moments, they want to tell their friends, they want to buy the swag. It's a whole thing now. It's become a thing, and we don't consider ourselves cool by any means. Rumble Boxing is not cool. The people are telling us we're cool, and we're loving every moment of it. We love the people coming, taking photos and sharing it and working out with us.
Well, you've added a lot of excitement to the fitness sector, and it's great to see. Question, can we take some of those boxing gloves and send them down to Washington? What do you think? Maybe the Republicans could use them?
How about this? Washington, D.C. in late spring. I'll be there. Me and my wife are coming. We're opening up Rumble Boxing, Washington, D.C. That's up in the horizon for 2019.
So bipartisan boxing?
Anyone can put the gloves on. How about that? It'll be a good fight.
Great to have you, Andy. Thank you.
John, pleasure. Thank you.
Pleasure. In other headlines, Verizon is warning Fios customers about a potential blackout of ESPN and Disney channels if the two sides can't come to a carriage agreement. The current deal expires December 31st. For its part, ESPN is all but using the college football playoffs as a public negotiating tactic, warning Fios customers that they might not be able to watch. The death toll from that devastating tsunami that hit Indonesia over the weekend is climbing to at least 429. Right now, slowing rains are impacting our search for survivors, and the volcano that triggered the tsunami is still erupting. The CDC is reporting high influenza activity, particularly in the South and Midwest, and says that 7 children have died during the current flu season. In recent years, the flu seems to be shifting to children more than older adults. And Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg has been released from the hospital and is now recuperating at home. And the 85-year-old had 2 cancerous nodules removed. Ahead on the show, progressive Democrat Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez may be in a hunt for a seat on the powerful House committee in charge of tax laws. Details next. Democratic Socialist Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is eyeing one of the most powerful committees in the House, the Ways and Means Committee, which is in charge of writing tax laws. Let's bring in Kimberly Strassel, a member of the Wall Street Journal editorial board. Kimberly?
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Does Ocasio-Cortez have the financial chops to be placed in this committee in the first place?
Well, look, she doesn't really have any experience in legislating. That isn't necessarily a problem. But I think one of the concerns here is who do the Democrats want to actually be the face of their party? And if you give someone like her that amount of leverage and position, you are setting up the progressive movement and all of their ideas, which are not necessarily things that Americans love, as the official spokesman for the Democrats.
That makes perfect sense. Another Democrat, New York State Representative Tom Suozzi, is also bidding for the same seat. He's more economically conservative than Ocasio-Cortez. He also has more experience than a freshman representative. What do you think about that?
Well, look, these are the folks, guys like that, who actually won Democrats this last election. If you go out and you look at all of the races that were so important and actually got Miss Pelosi her majority, were in these suburban districts with candidates like that guy, who sounded a lot more moderate, sounded a lot more in a way like Republicans in some of their positions. And these are the folks that if you put them on those committees, they're going to leave a better impression going forward than an Ocasio-Cortez who's out there talking about Medicare for all or the Great Green New Revolution.
Switching gears, I want to share with the viewers a bit of Journal Editorial Board's piece on Trump and the Fed. The editorial is titled, "Overconfidence at the Fed." Quote, Mr. Trump complicates matters as ever with his criticism of Fed Chairman Jerome Powell. Apparently he has nominator's remorse, but then anyone in Mr. Powell's seat would have the same difficult task navigating the exit from nearly a decade of zero interest rates and record bond buying. The Fed chairs who put Mr. Powell in this predicament were Ben Bernanke and Janet Yellen, who led their monetary experiment role for so long. Does Trump have a right to be annoyed at Powell when he was Trump's choice?
Well, look, I think the point of this is that Jerome Powell has got a terrible situation he's having to deal with, not one of his creation, one from the former Fed chiefs who engaged in this great experiment known as quantitative easing, zero interest rates. And now he's got the job of trying to figure out how you unwind from that situation. Nobody has a roadmap here. It's a very complicated question. Now, I don't think the Fed is necessarily doing the right thing and relying on all the usual indicators, lagging indicators in some cases like GDP or unemployment rates as a way of making its decisions going forward. It needs to do a better job of looking at market rates. But we're all in uncharted territory here. It would probably be useful if the president backed off a little, gave them some space politically to make some of these decisions without feeling like they were being pushed into it by the president.
Thank you, Kimberly.
Thank you.
Coming up, the biggest potential Democratic candidates for president in 2020 are going all in on the fight to lower drug prices. Stay with us. "2020 is coming up fast, and Democratic contenders for president are rolling out plans to lower drug prices to harness the anger towards Big Pharma. They're essentially following in the footsteps of Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, protesting drug companies during his campaign for president. Joining me right now is New York Post columnist Betsy McCoy. Betsy.
Good politics. This is good politics because Americans are suffering from pharmaceutical sticker shock. Drugs are about 12% of the healthcare budget, but it's the part you feel and see you right there at the drugstore cash register. So this is good politics, but unfortunately, the approaches that these leading candidates are taking are wacky and in some cases actually dangerous. Take Bernie Sanders. He wants to shorten or eliminate patent protection. That would mean that investors pull their money out of the drug industry and put it somewhere else that's safer, right?
It would destroy research and development.
Exactly. And who will lose? Any family dealing with what's currently considered an incurable illness. Elizabeth Warren, her approach is even zanier. She's suggesting that the government become the manufacturer of these drugs, a la Venezuela, where you can see what the results are there. State-owned enterprises have not done well for the most part. But Donald Trump has a very good approach, and he's already implementing it.
And what is that approach?
Well, he's identified the real problem, which is foreign freeloading. Americans consume about 46% of patented drugs, but they provide 70% of the profit because other countries like Japan, Canada, the UK, Italy, these are government-run health systems, and they pay only the cost of manufacturing the pill. They impose the entire cost of developing these products on American consumers. So Trump has said, end this foreign freeloading. And he's already said to the drug companies, when you sell the kinds of drugs that are used in doctors' offices or hospitals, you must use an international index, and you cannot allow these other countries to get real bargains. You must raise your prices over there to alleviate some of the burden on American consumers. And it's going to work. It will take a few more months to put it into effect, but it's going to work. And then just last month, he announced that under Medicare Part D, that's what all the consumers listening are really familiar with if they're on Medicare, that Medicare Part D will, by 2020, stop paying for exorbitantly priced drugs if there are at least two alternatives in what they call the same therapeutic category, like two other blood thinners that are more reasonably priced. That will put pressure on some of these drug companies to stop the gouging.
What prevents drug companies from raising the prices of their product to Japan?
Because the government buys for the whole country. That's the same as in the UK, for example, and in Canada. So they drive a very hard bargain with the drug companies. But Trump is intervening. He's saying, I'm not going to let this happen because consumers here are getting whacked with the entire R&D expense, research and development expense. So he's forcing the drug companies to abide by this international index, 16 countries, and they can't sell here for a much higher price.
It's interesting that a patented product that can't be duplicated still has to be sold at a price that is unattractive to the manufacturer.
Well, it's because they have all these years of research and development to recoup. Here's something that most people may not realize. Almost all cures are developed in drug company labs, not in university labs, not in government labs. And these innovations developed by the drug companies are by far responsible for almost all the increase in our longevity since World War II.
So if Bernie Sanders' plan comes into place and those protections disappear, then there's no investment in the category whatsoever.
Unless you are happy with the state of medical knowledge right now, and nobody is, we all are hoping for cures. Unless you're happy with just arresting medical development right where it is, you can't support the Bernie Sanders approach because it says the future doesn't count anymore. We don't need any new cures.
It'd be like driving the same car for 20 years. They'd never develop anything to make it better.
That's right. Worse, even worse, because in this case, your life is at stake.
What's fascinating to me is how genetic drugs are expanding, but they're not always the same either.
Not always, especially when you're talking about psychiatric drugs, for example. And I hope that voters will look carefully at the extremely bizarre socialist approach of Elizabeth Warren. We all see the Democratic Party moving far to the left, but her approach to drug pricing is, as I said, like Venezuela.
Unbelievable. So she, with government-produced drugs, would end the future of research, and we'd probably have shortages.
And imagine how unlikely it is that the government could ever develop the infrastructure, hire the scientists, and start producing these drugs. Why do that when we have the world's most sophisticated and successful pharmaceutical companies?
Which is based on patents, protection, and solid investment.
And by the way, the Dems have really demagogued this, because when you look at the profit margins of drug companies, they're right in the middle. They are not as high as computer companies, for example, software companies. There are a lot of industries that are earning much higher margins than drug companies.
So they're not necessarily the evil ones.
Right.
Yeah.
Although
Betsy,
it's still painful at the cash register.
it sure is each month.
So, yeah.
Thank you, Betsy.
You're welcome.
Coming up next, the government is shut down over a fierce fight to fund the wall. While down on the border, chaos is erupting after ICE dumped hundreds of migrants at a bus station in El Paso with no apparent warning and no plan to handle it. We'll be right back.